Welcome to the Inspiration Contagion podcast, where we spread inspiration one story at a time. I am your host, Holly Jean Jackson. Each episode spotlights and interviews one transformational leader, their stories, and their advice for how you too can lead yourself and others through inspiration. If you are a visionary seeking to uplevel your leadership skills, then this is the podcast for you. I invite you today to spread inspiration like a contagion. Welcome to the Inspiration Contagion movement. Welcome to episode 44 of the Inspiration Contagion podcast. This week's episode is also being recorded for YouTube, so if you'd prefer to watch instead, please check the show notes for a link. This week's guest is Ioana Aboumitri, and I hope I got that correct. She is the founder of Kalani, a Polynesian-inspired wellness program. Descending from a royal family in Samoa, her grandfather was the paramount chief of a region of the island. With a deep connection to her ancestors, her mission is to spread their spirit, with Kalani as her vessel. She is the mother of 3 inspiring girls, a 2-time published author currently working on her 3rd and 4th books, a registered holistic nutritionist, Pilates instructor, experienced public presenter, aspiring singer-songwriter, stay tuned, pun intended, and a world traveler. She has also been featured on several media outlets, including CTV News, CBC National News, and Global News. Her purpose is connection, and her message is #spread Alofa. With that, welcome Ioana to the show.
Thank you so much, Holly. I'm so honored to be here. I love everything that you are about, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you here. And I love your introduction and checking out your website. It's a beautiful message. It's really certainly inspiring and a great fit for our audience today. So why don't you just start by telling our audience a little bit more about your background and what you do?
Yes, I will. Thank you so much. I was born in Lebanon and we left because of the war. We traveled all around the world. So we moved from Lebanon to Kuwait, to New Zealand, to Samoa, to Lebanon, and then to Canada. So we've been all over the place. And throughout my travels, I've always had self-esteem and I was always self-conscious and really uncomfortable in crowds and social settings. And so moving really made all of that a little bit more challenging for me. So that's something that I've always dealt with. And so I was a person that was not chosen to be in the school plays. I was not chosen to be in the dances. I was not chosen to do any of those things because I was very awkward. I did everything that I could to avoid any kind of movement whatsoever. So fast forward to 2007 here in Canada, when my mother moved to Canada from New Zealand, and she started to teach me some of the Polynesian dancing because she was a Polynesian performer back in the 70s, traveled around the world. And when she started to teach me some of the movements, I felt something that I've never felt in my entire life. So I'm barefoot, moving my hips around, and I felt this really profound connection. That's why I use the word connection. And I couldn't understand it at the time. I just felt that it was kind of like in those sci-fi movies where you get overpowered by this feeling and you feel like everything is transformed. So I wanted to explore that. And at the time, I was actually a Pilates instructor. And I decided to merge both those disciplines together. And I created something called Kelani. So Kelani comes from 2 of my daughters. I have 3. So at the time, there were only 2. Ioana, which means God's gracious gift, and Leilani, which means heavenly flower. And together, they form Kelani. And I discovered later, actually, that Kelani actually means of the heavens. So I thought that was pretty appropriate. So I started to do the movements, and it was kind of, it was very methodical. So we did the Polynesian dancing and we did the Pilates, but then over time, it just metamorphosized into something a little bit more. So I opened a studio and I would put the Polynesian music on. And Holly, it was something that I can't even explain. So all these movements just started to come to my body and to my head. And I started to visualize the island where I lived. So I started to do movements that were inspired by the island. And I just really felt transformed. And over time, the people that were coming to my classes, to my sessions, to my workshops, they they were telling me that they were really emotional, they were euphoric, they were, people were crying, and I didn't really understand at the time what was going on. But after years and years of being in the wellness world, I discovered that it's this emotional, deep connection that we have, first of all, to our higher selves, and then to nature. So when you're thinking about nature, when you're thinking about the ocean, you're actually sending out the vibrations and then it's coming back, and it's a feeling that you can't explain. So that's how Kelani was born. And I also, because of my history of self-esteem issues and being self-conscious, I wanted to create a really safe space that was inclusive for everybody. And that's basically how Kelani was born.
Mm, so many good notes in there. I love one, the connection to nature and to your heritage. They've actually done studies on our connection in particular to water and how even looking at a picture or an image of water or the color blue literally calms the brain and brings us to a state where we're in that parasympathetic safe place so that we're not feeling anxious or flooded with negative hormones. So like I can totally relate to having that visualization for water or the ocean, the island that your heritage is from. And it's so important to reconnect and get grounded, especially today with, COVID and everything changing and really creating a new normal in our world. And I love that you're creating that safe space for people. Never have we needed that more. So that's really beautiful. I love the name of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And exactly what you said. I actually have one of the disciplines that I teach or that I lead is a Kelani guided meditation, and a lot of it is based on the different colors. So each week we do a different color, and we talk about the psychology of it at the beginning and what it means and what it represents. And then we do an imagery based on the island. So you hit that right on the head. You hit the nail right on the head, because I tell my clients a lot about shifting from the sympathetic to parasympathetic. And though there's so much, especially nowadays, that we cannot control, there's so much that we can control from the inside. And it's our response to the stressors, not taking the stressors away, because there's not that much we can do, that's really important. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, meditation and visualization are just so powerful for helping us reground and deal with the modern world and the modern stressors. So, one of the questions I like to ask everyone is, what makes you such an inspirational leader, or what is your secret sauce?
That's a really good question. Well, my message, as I believe you mentioned at the very beginning, is spread alofa. So alofa is love in my Samoan language. So that's actually the title of one of my books, Spread Alofa. And it's not, Hollywood or fairy tale love, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's love that's inspired by the reverence that my ancestors have for community, humanity, our higher selves, and nature. So I try to carry all of that over in every single thing that I do for my clients. So I guess if I had to, sum it up in one word, I guess alofa would be my secret sauce. They call me actually over here, they call me the alofa girl. So
I love that. We definitely could use some more spreading of Alofa. That's really beautiful. We'll have to include that when we do our advertising for this episode as it goes live. Maybe our challenge to our listeners and people that tune in will be how they spread Alofa. There certainly could be more of that alongside some inspiration in the world to make this a better place. So that's beautiful.
thank you.
I also want to ask you, what does inspiration mean to you?
Inspiration for me is when you are in the presence of either an entity or an experience or a person or an environment which makes you excited about taking your inner passion to the next level, because I believe, and that's just my belief, that everybody has passion, whether it's on the surface or way deep tucked inside. And I think that it's a matter of getting something, whatever that thing is, to bring that passion to the surface. So that's what I believe inspiration is. Yeah.
I love that. And it can be really a layer or peeling back the onion process for some of us to figure out what that is. And it can be simple. It doesn't have to be anything grandiose. It could be really, really small, but it's amazing. These really small things have such a profound ripple effect that we often can't see. And it's interesting because I just, since it's December as we're recording this, just watched the movie It's a Wonderful Life, which is my favorite Christmas movie to watch each year. And what I love about that is we don't really understand fully the impact we have on people's life until we actually are in the afterlife and step back from it, or people tell us the impact that we've had. And what's so great about that movie is it shows that some of the smallest things that seem minuscule to him, or even some of the larger things, have a larger ripple effect than we can even imagine. And so I imagine with Alofa, that's a big part of it, is just having that ripple effect and bringing that passion to the surface.
100%. And it's interesting because yesterday I was just reading a bunch of Mother Teresa quotes, and it's all along that same line that, you know, it's the small things that have that ripple effect. I think I talk a lot about pendulum swings, and I think the fallacy in our world is that you either need to go big or do nothing at all, that there lies nothing in between that. But really every single thing that we do, as from something as simple as letting that person who's stuck in traffic just go ahead of you, that has a ripple effect. He's gonna, I mean, I don't need to talk to you about that, but I absolutely agree with that. It's really, it doesn't have to be, you know, this huge thing for it to have an impact on somebody's life. And sometimes you don't know, as you said, you don't know until, sometimes you don't actually ever know. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and spreading that kindness and compassion to community, humanity, what Alofa represents, is a powerful way to have small, tangible impacts that are larger than we will ever really know. But just you have to just know in your heart that that is happening. I also love to ask, how do you define success, and how did you arrive at this definition?
I love that question. I had that discussion with my friend in the wellness world. I think that, well, I think that everybody's idea of success is different. There is no empirical formula for success. Success for me, it could be different from success for you and for success for other people. However, I do believe that success that is tied to a higher purpose is a success that I personally strive for, because to me, that is a success that leads to ultimate happiness. So, I mean, financial success could be you have a goal to get a lot of money, and then you're successful at that. For me, success is higher purpose without a shadow of a doubt. So if I am able, when I'm able, every day to wake up and make a positive impact on people's lives, that's success. I'm successful each and every day I set out that purpose. I'm successful each and every day I'm in gratitude. I'm successful each and every day I'm in that flow. And so I think success is being on the road. It's not necessarily a destination. So yeah.
I love that it's not a destination, because a lot of people, their definition of success, regardless financial or climbing the corporate ladder for a specific role or whatever, it's very destination driven. It's like, well, when this happens, I will be happy. And it's those if or should statements that typically keep us separated from joy and happiness. So it's really enjoying the process and as being peaceful and happy throughout the entire journey from end to end. And like you said, it's recognizing that you're in the flow, or you're doing something positive that's having that ripple effect, and not taking that for granted. So that's beautiful.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Yeah. What challenges or obstacles did you face along your journey to success?
My own brain. So I always talk about myself like a radio station, and I have all the different dials. So I tune into my higher self, or I'm tuned into my ego, or I'm tuned into the outside voices. So I think my challenges, I know that my challenges are when I'm not tuned so much into the higher self, and I am listening too much to the ego voices or to all the voices around me telling me that this is what success should look like. And I believe that there are so many entities that try to impose their idea of success on me. And anytime I am dialing into that and the voices get so loud that I'm not able to tune in as well to my higher self, that's definitely when there's a challenge. Um, I'll give an actual example if that's okay with
Yeah.
you. Yeah, so I bought a house last year with my daughters, and I remember going to the bank, and they need all your financial statements. And I remember putting down my financial statements and suddenly feeling a sense of shame because they don't look as I thought a person in her 40s should have the numbers looking like, and 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 I realized, I went back home, or actually I stopped in the middle of the road, and I would think I was crying in my car. And I thought, oh, I'm not as financially successful. And then I realized for a moment, I've been in the wellness world for almost 20 years. There have been endless people who have told me, and this isn't to pat myself on the back, it's actually factual, who've said to me what an impact I've made in their lives, how much I've done for them, that what I've done for them is therapy, how much joy I bring and things like that. But that's not on a financial statement. There's no statement that gives the numbers for all the people that I've helped in the world. So trying to really remember that is really important for me, and try to make sure that my inner saboteur, which I believe most of us have, doesn't take control, the two voices. So that's definitely been my challenge myself.
Yeah, and that it's interesting you say that because it's a theme for a lot of people that are transformational, inspiring leaders. And I mean, I struggle with that too. We have seasons where our ego or the saboteur gets really, really loud and we go back into old patterns, old habits, old beliefs, and we let that, wreak havoc. And that's how we know we're out of flow, as you were mentioning. I love the radio example because it really is very interesting when we're going through a valley, which, if you're an entrepreneur, we all know we have a lot of peaks and a lot of valleys. And
Yep.
the better we have perspective and groundedness and tune into that higher self on the radio station, the better it is, easier it is to navigate those peaks and valleys. But sometimes we hit valleys and we lose. We lose to that saboteur, and then it takes a minute to get back on track. And that's why it's really important to have mentors and community people to remind you if you're way out of whack. Hey, what's going on?
I definitely agree with you 100%.
Yeah. So, what is one story of inspiration that you are known for?
One story of inspiration that I'm known for. Oh, I can think of an example of a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and use that. So I had a physical space and studio back in the old world when we were allowed to gather in spaces face to face. I had a physical location in another city, and I had a bunch of instructors and all sorts of different classes. And I remember pulling up to my studio, and a lady was parked in her car, and I said, well, what are you doing? Come in. And she says, no, it's okay. I'm waiting for a friend. I don't like to go to new places without my friend. And I said, no, it's okay. Just come in. I'll take care of you. You're good. And she came into my studio, and I have a class called Kalani dance. And she stood way at the back of the room, and she was really self-conscious and uncomfortable. Anyway, fast forward to a few weeks later, this lady was at the front of the room, shaking her hips, totally free, releasing her inner self and her inner diva, and she was in full self-expression. So I think that if anything, well, connection, I guess, is the thing that people tell me that I'm known for, because I'm really good at connecting with people, and I'm really good at helping people connect in turn with their higher selves, and then releasing that for self-expression. That's definitely one of the stories that I'll always remember.
I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, self-expression is really important, and feeling safe enough to express yourself is really important. And I do agree, it takes a community and safe connection for some of us to reach a place where we are safe enough to start having that expression, because I think sometimes it can feel scary after living in a society or a home where maybe self-expression is not warranted or accepted. And so providing that space for customers, people that you come across is a really beautiful gift.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. So you identified as a heart-centered leader primarily, and I wanted to ask you, what does heart-centered leadership mean to you?
Well, going back to Alofa, Alofa is always going to be that thing for me. Heart-centered leadership for me means coming from a space of unconditional love, where really what I connect to primarily, like my purpose is higher purpose, is being able to help people. So I live in purpose, like I said to you earlier, every single day I wake up, and that is my primary, that is my primary focus. I have a gratitude practice. I live from my heart, and I always talk about doing things that feel good, that are good for you from the inside, not from the outside. So trying to find inner happiness and working from a heart space. So loving myself first and foremost, being the best version of myself, filling my cup so that I can help other people to truly love themselves. So self-love, loving each other, and understanding the connection between love and our well-being. I think that we live in a world perhaps where things can be overcomplicated, and I don't think it needs to be that complicated. I think love in its truest form and its truest expression, unconditionally, with nothing, expecting nothing in return, is such a powerful, powerful entity. And you know as well as I do, just even being in a heart-centered space sends out vibrations that can, heal the universe. I know sometimes for some people that may sound wacky, but I truly believe it. So I believe there's two directions that we can go in life. We can go in fear, or we can go in love. And when you go in love and you have that intention, that becomes your state. So just because we're in love, it doesn't mean that we don't have problems, or we don't have stressors, or we don't have issues in our life. It just means that this is the state that you always fall back to, and all your actions come from this space. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I mean, I agree. It does definitely sends healing vibrations out there. And when we live from that state of love versus fear, which is hard for a lot of people right now with the pandemic, if we watch the news, it could be scary, but that's why I try not to watch too much of it. And so it's powerful because when we come from that place of love, we start taking action from a place of love. We react to things that happen to us from a place of love versus fear and reaction in a negative way. We give people the benefit of the doubt when we come from a place of love. We tend to be less extreme or dramatic in our responses. And I feel like that's something that we're definitely missing a lot of, especially with the pandemic and how people are responding to that.
I agree with that. And just going back to the pandemic for a moment, I think that it's important for people to understand, as I said earlier, is that just because you're in a place of love, it doesn't mean that you can't experience other things as well. So we can experience stress, or we can experience maybe even anger. We can experience all those things, but that's just a temporary feeling. If you think that I wake up every morning and I am love, I am in a state of love, that is my go-to, then whatever you experience is just a temporary thing, and then you go back to that space. There's almost a comfort in that, knowing that there's so much, like I said, that we can't control from the outside, but there's so much we can control from the inside 24 hours a day. So I agree with everything that you said.
Yeah, and I mean, it can be difficult for people that are not used to being in that state of love or sharing alofa. So it really is a practice. It's something you consistently need to pull back to. And like you just said, we'll have these, it's not to say that these other negative experiences or emotions or feelings are not real. You still want to process those. If you're angry, great, go kickboxing, go running, do something that's healthy to release that feeling, if especially if it's really strong. If you're feeling sad, allow yourself space to cry. And once that passes, which typically most feelings do pass in a matter of minutes, it feels intense while it's there, but it does pass if you allow yourself to feel it. But a lot of people don't want to feel it, so they choose to numb it out or ignore it. And that's why the feelings will kind of harbor in and stay stuck. And then it is very difficult to get back to a place of love. Is there a daily practice that you do that helps you stay in that state of love or alofa?
Absolutely. Well, I have 3 children, as you mentioned at the beginning. Before we do anything, before we put anything in our bodies, before we eat, before we drink, we always practice gratitude. So gratitude practice is extremely important for all of us. In fact, my clients and I just did a 21-day gratitude challenge where we wrote 10 things that we're grateful for every day, different things. And by the end of it, we had about 200 things, some things we're grateful for. So for me, starting off the day, before I do anything, in gratitude is really important for me. I move. So, I'm a movement facilitator. So the first thing I do in the morning is some kind of movement, because movement and motion equals emotion. So that's really important to get the flow. We're talking about the flow. Mind, body, spirit are not 3 entities. They're all one. So it's important to continue that flow. It's smart. It's a very smart vehicle, I guess, for lack of a better word. So, or vessel. So I do some kind of movement. And then after I take my children to school, I come back and I typically do some kind of another movement practice. So the first thing I do is I prime myself with movement. I come back, I do more movement. I love dancing. So, and especially with the hips. So the second element of Kelani is hip movements and connection to the hips, because we carry a lot of emotion in our hip area. And so I do a hip based movement practice for myself. And then I just try to be really mindful about the things that go into my body as much as possible. Maybe not so much right now during the holiday season, but we'll talk about that. But having like my lemon water and being really mindful about those things, that helps as well holistically with my body. And then I journal as well. I have a journal where I do my gratitude. I write down my gratitude. I do my affirmations. I journal about what's going on in my life, what my purpose is. I just keep on reminding myself. Sometimes I do the mirror thing where I stare at myself in the mirror and tell myself how much I love myself. Or sometimes I apologize for being, not so nice to myself. And those are the main things that I do. And I'm in Canada, so it's a little chillier right now. I'm a little bit of I don't like the snow as much, but when the weather is suitable for my Polynesian Mediterranean self, being out in nature is one of my top practices for myself. Just being actually, these are fake trees, just in case you're wondering, but actually touching a tree, actually hugging a tree, and just being mindful in nature is really important. And I try, although admittedly I don't do as much as I'd like to, get in my own meditation practice as much as I'd like to. So just trying to get all of that in a day, and then being, practicing radical self-compassion to myself if I'm not able to get all of those things done as well, because sometimes it just doesn't happen. So, but those are the things that usually happen in my day.
I like that. That was a lot of examples for people that are trying to figure out how to live in a state of radical love and alofa. So, the one thing that I like the most, especially right now, that I think people forget is the looking in the mirror and apologizing to yourself. We are our own worst critic. If we could tape record half the things we tell ourselves, even if you've been working on this for decades, um, it's crazy. We would not say things like that to our best friend or anyone that we love. So I love that idea of going to the mirror on a regular, maybe at least once a week or every day, and saying, I am so sorry for not being compassionate and kind to you. And really saying that. I imagine that would be really powerful to a lot of our listeners that are tuning in today.
I agree. And I think for someone who hasn't done it before, they might feel it's a little bit odd at first. But it actually is a really powerful practice. And studies show that the more you do it, the more you actually signal to the brain. You're rewiring the brain when you're doing it. So it is a powerful, powerful practice. I highly recommend it to anybody that's listening who's never done it before.
And it's a great way to spread Alofa to yourself. And you can't really love others until you take care of your own self. So that's great. So I wanted to ask you, at what age did you start believing in yourself?
Oh, that's a good one, Holly. What age did I start believing in myself? Uh, you know what? I am going to maybe radically say now.
That's okay.
43. Isn't that interesting? My third book, which I actually just released on my birthday, December the 13th, it's an ebook. That was kind of an accident book. I didn't mean to write it, but the process of writing the book was really, really profound for me. It was so organic, but through writing the book, I discovered a lot of a lot of things in the wiring of my brain that I've had literally my entire life. And over the past year, I have to say that I've been processing all of that is actually the first time in my life that I've accepted myself wholly. I've accepted, maybe I've always thought, oh, my brain's pretty okay, or I'm pretty creative, I guess, or I'm pretty good at doing projects. I've accepted parts of me, but to accept myself wholly has been quite the journey. And I just got to it at 43 years old this year. Yes, now.
I think it's really brave and encouraging to share that because a lot of people ask this question. There's some people that say very young, and I think it's just because they're already very in tune with that higher power or purpose very young. Perhaps they've been reincarnated for all we know, and they've lived many lives. But I agree. I think that each day we either gain more belief in ourselves or we lose more belief in ourselves. And it, like you were talking about rewiring the brain, and how also, I don't know if you guys have been listening, you're very intentional about your words. The way we speak, the way we think creates our experience. And so every day you can look at it as we're either getting more confident in our belief and more compassionate towards ourselves, or we're backsliding in the opposite direction. And I think also sometimes external experiences or very personal experiences can make us backslide. So I think it's very encouraging and brave that you're sharing that you're just getting to a more confident place. But I imagine you've had, like you said, bits and pieces, and it was kind of a stepping stone process to get to where you are at 43.
Yes, it has definitely been a journey, and I wrote it somewhere. I don't remember. I read a lot of different things, but I think that for a lot of people, it could be a ta-da! All of a sudden, you just, whoa, here I am, love me. Or it could be a process over time, and then something just not magically, like lifts the veil off, and then you release yourself. That's what happened to me. So it's been a gradual process, but something happened in the last couple of months that really kind of burst it open. So I think everyone's journey, as you said, is completely different, but awareness of it is really important. And you touched earlier on mentors and a support system and a village, and I think that's really important as well, because we don't see from ourselves sometimes what's going on as well as people can objectively from the outside. So I think it's so important. I call it, our wellness or our healing village. Very, very vital to have. I highly recommend. I'm not a mentor or a coach, but I highly recommend a mentor or a coach, or just anyone in your life, or a circle of people that can hold this unconditional safe space for you, that can help you on your journey, because I think that's important.
And I recommend having both a mentor and more than one coach. So I have a couple mentors in different parts of my life, and then I have a business coach for the business side, and I have a life coach because there are certain things, there's not really, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So a lot of people that I work with for business coaching, they have things that are stuck and they're doing all the right things tactically. They're taking the correct action, yet it's not panning out the way we anticipate it will, right?
Yeah.
Typically it's because something personally is going on, a mindset thing, a belief thing, a personal challenge, being in the wrong place that they're living, the wrong relationship, and it's all very, very interconnected. And what's interesting is that I'm certified, as a health coach, life coach, and a business coach. And yet I am telling you that I have all those coaches to support me because, like you just said, you can't be objective when it's yourself. And so you learn these new things about yourself when you have a team there to be like, hey, have you considered looking at this? And I'm like, whoa, how did I miss that? It's like, something sticking out of your head is like, hi, fix me.
Yeah, absolutely. And then over and above that, as well as the accountability portion of it, because we all know it's, you know, humans go away from pain and towards pleasure. And sometimes the process of change and growth doesn't feel super awesome. And so if we're left to our own devices, a lot of us, myself included, are going to choose the pleasure part. I'm going to choose to just hang out on the couch and not do all the work that makes my brain hurt and go, what? I've been doing this all my life, and all those kinds of things. So I think that the accountability part of it is really important as well. And as you touched on much earlier in our podcast as well, it's a practice and a process. So I think that that's really important for people to understand as well. And whatever path we decide to choose, it is a practice and the consistency. And sometimes if we're not quite able to, or we don't have the motivation, it really does help to have somebody else on the outside going, hey, Ioana, so did you do your meditation today? Did you do this? Did you do that? I think all of that is really, really important.
Yeah, well, and I find too that the letting go process can be very painful. So it's really important to have somebody there to support you through that because they can explain and relate to what you're experiencing because they've been there and they've coached other clients through it or they've done it themselves. So it makes you feel like even though the transformation may be painful, it's a normal part of the process. So it kind of gives you a nice check in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So valuable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I also wanted to ask, how do you show belief in others as a leader?
I think that, I talked about this to somebody else. Uh, listening is a tool that I don't think a lot of people apply, or that's been my experience. I think it's really, really important to just sit down with somebody, connect with them first and foremost, and just listen, just really, really, really listen, let them talk. And I think oftentimes people will reveal what they already know from the inside, but you have to, it's almost like drawing it out of them. I think giving them that safe space and having them understand that that you're there for them and that you're there to listen to them, and really pay attention to everything that they're saying. I think that is what people will, it'll happen on their own. I don't think you can want it for people more than they want it for themselves, but I think giving them that safe space is really important. And usually, like I said, people end up just, it just ends up popping out, but you have to be that, that person, that safe space for them.
Yeah, and never has that been more important than today is holding space for people, allowing them to shine through or share a difficult experience and to feel seen and heard. That's the best way to express love in so many ways is just listening and being present with somebody so that they feel seen, heard, and understood because that's ultimately what most people want when you break it down to really simple terms and that's how we express love towards each other is by holding space for them.
Mhm. I agree with that. With my, so I have a virtual studio, and part of what we offer is something called Kalani Diaries, and it happens every week. And we're community based, and basically what happens is we all gather in the Brady Bunch squares, and everybody has an opportunity to speak. 5, 10, 15 minutes. We all mute ourselves, and everybody just speaks, and it's a safe space where people can share openly. And all of us are listening carefully, so it's open sharing, open listening, and open caring. And it's amazing how much transformation happens just from sitting back and letting somebody talk and holding that space for them. It's beautiful.
I love that. Is there a story that you can share with our listeners about how you lead from the heart?
Hmm, that is a great question. How I lead from the heart. Well, mm,
It could be working with a client specifically or somebody at the studio on how you lead from the heart.
Well, typically, I do things more in a group setting. And so I have something called a Kalani Experience. So again, back in the old world when we used to gather with people. So in the experience, we have three elements in the experience. So all the elements are based on connection. The first element is connecting to the hips. The second element is connecting to nature. And the third element is connecting to our higher selves. So I think having um, community, I guess, is the biggest thing for me. As an islander, that is probably the biggest element that we have, that we're known for, is just this kind of open door policy. And so I try to create that communal environment for people. And so when people come to my Kelani experiences, they the energy that's created with everybody, that and it usually ends up being women, to be honest with you. So kind of like that sisterhood. I tell people you can work out till you're blue in the face or eat like a rabbit, but if you don't have community, that's a powerful pillar that I believe is missing in our lives. And so creating that communal based environment. So first of all, when you're connecting to the hips, like I said, a lot of emotions are flowing. When you're doing that with a bunch of women, it's a very powerful, profound experience that I cannot explain in words. All I can tell you is that there's a euphoria that we experience. And so already opening up those channels and those vibrations in our body, I talked a lot about flow. So creating already that emotional flow in the body opens people up. That's what I found from my experience, is that when you open people up, then you can, this might sound, it's clear in my head, but you can inject anything you want into them. You know what I mean? So we're open with the hips, and then we do our, visualization into nature. So you're shifting away, you're moving from sympathetic to parasympathetic. So now we've got the brain. So we've got the chakras, the root and sacral chakra are all moving. We've got the flow going on in the bodies. And then you've got the brain that's now shifting. And then in the third and the final one in our higher selves is having people lay down, and then I just talk. And as you've probably seen, I do enjoy the talking part of it, but I just talk and I just have people do their affirmations and then repeat it in their minds, like repeat it either verbally or just in their heads. And I find that the combination of all three really helps to create flow, like I said, open people up, and then they're more able to receive everything that is really important for them. So getting that self-care and that self-love and that self-expression, and then doing it with a group of people. I mean, I've had people like bawl, like their eyes are just like, everyone's crying. I try not to bawl my eyes out because it's very difficult to talk when I'm crying. But that the communal experience is the most profound thing that I offer people. That
Yeah.
was a long answer.
No, I mean, it's a great answer. It's a good story for sure. And I'm sure people are missing that connection face to face, but there's still ways to build amazing community experiences. I was actually just imagining providing that same experience online, which is possible. Not quite the same energy, but energy flows from anywhere. So I'm sure it's still powerful in a different way. But I love that you're intentionally opening the hips, like the psoas area. I'm a yoga instructor, not for fun. So opening the psoas area is really important for releasing emotions and feeling and processing that, so it doesn't get stuck or stagnant in the body and create physical harm. And then doing that visualization, so powerful. Like one of the tools that I use the most with my clients is visualization. Visualizing their day, connecting to things. It's just so powerful. And I feel like that also connects us to our higher self and reminds us of staying motivated for our long-term vision for our higher self and the purpose we're here on this planet for. So that's beautiful.
Thank you. I agree with everything that you said.
Oh, thank you. All right, so we're going to hop into the lightning round of questions.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. All right, what's your favorite book?
Limitless by Jim.
Beautiful. What networking or community groups you love most?
I was going to say my own.
You should. Honestly, anytime I interview somebody who has a community, if you don't say your own, I'm usually surprised.
Good.
What's the best one piece of advice that you would share with others today?
Gratitude practice.
Love it. If you could share one message with the entire world, what would that be?
Simple, spread Alofa.
I love it. And last question, what's the legacy you wish to leave behind?
Same as the other one, Alofa and connection, for
I
sure.
love that. I love that. We need more of Alofa and more of connection for sure. So she's been super, super generous. She has a free Kalani guided meditation audio that you can access by signing up for her newsletter at www.kalaniworld.com. That link will be in the show notes for you to access. And you just click on I was a podcast audience member to get access to that free meditation. If you've been tuning into this show, I'm sure that you can see the value in everything that she is offering her clients and that heart-centered space. So make sure you take advantage of that beautiful gift. I also will have links to her Facebook and Instagram so you can follow her directly. Any questions that you have?
Holly, I am very, very grateful that you have shared your time and your energy and your heart space with me today. I'm just really, really grateful that I'm here on your show today. Thank you so much. And I wish you a happy New Year.
Thank you. You too. And for our listeners, we're recording this in December. So you'll be seeing this in February. So we hope that you have a safe and beautiful start to your new year. And hopefully you are striving towards and achieving your resolutions and goals for 2021. With that, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Inspiration Contagion. Thank you for joining the show today. I hope you were inspired. More importantly, I hope you take action. What is one thing you can do in this moment that will inspire someone? Without action, nothing changes. Be the change you wish to see in the world. If this show truly inspired you, we ask that you share it through your network. Help us spread the light and inspiration in the world. I look forward to seeing you here next week.